Good evening and welcome to Newswatch on this Tuesday, the 5th of September 2023. Thank you for choosing Hope TV. We are streaming live on our socials at Hope TV Kenya, where you can also send in your feedback. I'm Tess Njenga and our sign language interpreter is Boniface Mureithi. Let's begin. The Africa Climate Summit today entered its second day with President William Ruto hosting a high-level presidential session in which the panelists have held discussions on the global climate agenda. Speaking during the summit, President Ruto has spoken out against the punitive borrowing measures set by the international community, calling for a fair international financial system. The head of state has further called for conversion on the introduction of carbon tax, noting that climate change is destroying the economies of African nations, despite the continent contributing the least of the emissions.
While we are thinking about financing, for us in Africa, three things are very important. As they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu. Number one, speed. It takes inordinate to access any meaningful resources. Number two, it requires scale, because we've all agreed that enormous resources are required. And number three, affordability, so that we all pay the same. We pay 5 times more than others, meaning that in fact, the architecture is set up in a manner that if you borrow, it will be difficult for you to pay. And that is why we need a conversation, and a very candid conversation, and we are saying this in all honesty, around how do we get concessional funding? How do we pay as much as others are paying? How do we get Africa away from paying 5 times more? Many of our countries are headed into debt distress because of climate change. Let's be honest. We are suffering the most, whether it is in the Sahel with drought, whether it is in the Horn of Africa with drought, whether it is in South Africa and the southern part of our continent with cyclones. And we are saying the suffering is across the globe, but we carry the biggest brunt. I'll contextualize this. And because of climate change, we are forced to divert resources that are meant for economic growth into dealing with the effects of climate change.
Former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has praised President William Ruto for his admirable leadership. Speaking during the Climate Change Summit, John Kerry has said that Ruto's leadership can be felt. Kerry has said that President Ruto highlighted the importance of the summit and that everyone needs to voice their opinion to counter the adverse effects of climate change. The U.S. Special Envoy has added that it is critical for countries that produce emissions to take steps to get on the path of climate change.
I want you to know, as I listened, and as you listened, I could feel this room, something is happening. This is different. I feel that. This is different. I think, Mr. President, I would just say to you, your leadership is palpable. We feel it. And in what you have said today, there is such a clear path ahead for all of us. Africa is meeting. Africa is speaking. Africa is deciding. And nothing could make a greater difference, I think, on a global basis, given what you just heard from the President about the remarkable resources that are here in Africa. And it is critical for all of those 20 countries to immediately take steps to get on the path to the Paris Agreement, to align, to have the ability to keep 1.5 degrees alive. That will only happen if those 20 countries take the lead and make it happen.
Various stakeholders and religious leaders in Africa have expressed their concern on ongoing efforts by global economies to transition to clean and sustainable energy from fossil fuel-powered energy. While seconding the phasing out of fossil fuels, the religious leaders from across Africa have called on African leaders to come up with solutions to transition to clear energy sources that are affordable, efficient, and accessible to our communities. Gloria Musimbi has more.
Just a day after hundreds of people joined a People's March on Climate in the streets of Nairobi, as the African Climate Summit kicked off yesterday, various leaders have echoed their views on the effects of fossil fuels to the environment. Speaking during a breakfast meeting held in Nairobi, African religious leaders have urged African leaders to divest away from fossil fuel energy sources and set clear climate targets and necessary action needed to actualize the divestment.
We urge the African leaders to divest away from fossil fuel energy sources, that is oil, gas, and coal, and set clear climate targets and necessary actions needed to actualize the divestment, to operationalize a fair and just transition to clean energy sources that are affordable, efficient, and accessible for our communities.
Meanwhile, renewable consultant Ioannis Tsipuridis from Greenspace Africa retaliated by saying that there is a need to have a clear framework to tackle the use of fossil fuel energy and stabilize its effects to climate changes in Africa.
Let's take a step back and consider that as we speak right now, globally, 75% of total final energy consumption, that's everything in energy, not just electricity, comes from fossil fuels. 75% is huge. For that to change, we really need to dig hard and to work hard. 75%. Africa has only 2% of the global investment in renewables. Only 2%. And Africa is the definition of renewable.
On his part, Deputy Secretary General Pan-African Youth Union Roy Sasaka said Africa has the right policies in place, but noted that African leaders need to go a step further to review and implement locally tailored climatic solutions that will positively affect local communities across Africa.
What are some of the policy framework that we need to review? And there is actually need that there are some policies that are not working for us, but there is no one who has sat in such a room that, like we are seated here, to review those policies and actually align them. So yes, we'll talk about these policies, gaps, policy gaps, but how sustainable, what are we doing to review, to adapt to the Africa we want?
At the same time, the religious leaders have challenged African leaders to enhance green job creation to youth and facilitate development of financial solutions that are accessible and affordable to youth startups.
We call upon the African leaders to adopt a plan of action with robust policy and regulatory measures that are necessary for African countries to implement and support the growth of inclusive green economies that can provide jobs for the youth.
Reporting for TV Newswatch, I'm Gloria Musimbi.
Thank you, Gloria Musimbi, for that report. Now, this year's Africa Agriculture Status Report has been launched today at the 13th Africa Food Systems Forum, AGRF Summit in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The report emphasizes the urgency of tackling the issues plaguing African food systems, considering the looming changes posed by climate change and the potential repercussions of not acting. The report offers an in-depth exploration of the vulnerabilities, challenges, and transformative potential of the continent's food systems. Out of the 50 indicators outlined in the Food Systems Countdown Initiative framework, sub-Saharan African countries are performing worse than the global average in a total of 32 indicators, mostly related to diets, nutrition, and health.
The target, the aim to that empowerment is to achieve sustainable, healthy diet for all Africans. It is true that the agreement is not all about food system, but the question is how African food system can leverage this boost in terms of demand. The next channel of hope is coming through demographic dividend. As you probably know, by 2030, the continent will add 200 million people, and by 2050, 800 million people. And I know there are the highlights that this may be a ticking bomb for Africa. But as far as the report is concerned, we took a different view, looking at this demographic dividend more as an opportunity that can happen if we invest in labor productivity, in human capital, invest in technology, invest in knowledge and innovation. As someone put it, that if the right investment in labor productivity are made, human capital could be the Africa's greatest asset.
Now, despite being largely responsible for the worsening climate crisis in Africa, rich nations paid Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, and South Sudan just $2.4 billion in climate-related development finance in 2021. According to the Oxfam's and Fair Share report published today, the biggest polluting nations have fallen short of meeting both the climate and the humanitarian funds East African countries need to recover from their climate-fueled hunger crisis. The report further highlighted the impact of climate change on the future of the region.
Say living in rural areas, it means that they usually live from, growing crops or, herding cattle. So when climate change affects those areas and those communities, obviously people are greatly affected, more than people living in urban areas.
And so the solution now is one, to make sure we get financing to women directly, land ownership rights, and also make sure that there is a deliberate way of having women not only in our governments but in our boardrooms as CEOs, and very much having rural women part of the discussion.
Well, on that note, let us take a very fast break on Newswatch tonight. We have plenty more news coming up.
So this parent calls me, after service, and says, "Young man, you do not know what you've done," because it tells me that my son comes and tells me that, "Dad, I have also been struggling with ABCD. His was a mix of alcohol and pornography. And just hearing Justo on Route 104, I feel a young person like me give his testimony on how God has moved in his life. And I requested to meet the young man, and we met over coffee, became good friends. And I told him as well, listen, by me sharing does not mean, because the devil puts banana peels all over. Now, scripture tells us that, no weapon fashioned against you shall prosper. It doesn't say that weapons will not be fashioned. No, it says no weapon. It means weapons will be fashioned. And he will put traps all over. Right from your phone. You open Instagram, you see an image. And all of a sudden, it plays back. All those things. So that's another, because the battle is in the mind. That is why Paul says in Romans 12:1, not be conformed by the patterns of the world, but rather be transformed by the renewing of the mind. He knows it's here. The devil knows. And this guy is millions of years old. He's not our age mate. For those who remember when I used to tell us that on night, he's not your age mate. Stop saying that, me, I know that you have been saved for 15 years. Dude, the devil has been in existence for millions of years. So guess what? He knows everything about you. Okay? But greater is he that is in you than he knows. We walked together, and I'm happy to say that he found his deliverance. And he became also a peer champion, as it is, an educator. And for me, those are some of the things that, wow, without Hope FM, really the platform of Hope FM, and as Reverend Tomboy used to tell us as well, this is a platform not for you, but God is using you. The initiative Friends of Hope is more or less like what Romans 10:17 says, that faith comes only by the hearing, and hearing through the word of God. But how will they hear if somebody does not go to tell them? Think about that Muslim brother or sister who, because of you being a friend of hope and supporting with your 100 bob or whatever it is, that in Friday evening, by chance, they listen to Yesu Njenga. And then because of you supporting and being a friend of hope, the message will reach them in Zanzibar, in Mombasa, in whatever it is. Mimi ni rafiki mso. I'm a friend of hope. I'm just as Zawaka. I would like for you pia ukwe rafiki mso.
Hope TV is where you look and live, with an excellent selection of the best Christian programming consisting of local and international content of inspirational stories, talk shows, Bible commentary, youth, health shows, children entertainment, contemporary gospel music, extended times of worship, live broadcast, news, movies, drama, Christian ministry programs, and so much more. Hope TV is another quality service from Christ is the Answer Ministries, with over 45% of authentic and credible local content every week. Hope TV is a sister station to Hope FM, Kenya's leading Christian radio station, with footprints across the country. Tune in to Hope TV, where you look and live.
Yesu ndiye njia.
Mtoto gani katika hii ulimwengu ameitwa Mungu mkuu?
Nasema akasema udhu billahi.
Hata leo usisema udhu billahi, tafadhali usikize.
Yesu ndiye njia. Uchambuzi wa masuala tata katika Biblia na vitabu vingine vya kidini.
We don't believe that Christ was crucified. Christ was taken right to heaven by 4 angels, 4 archangels.
Kama Muhammad ndiye alikuwa wa kwanza kuleta dini ya Kiislamu, na alikuja after Jesus, sasa inawezekanaje Ibrahimu awe Muislamu, Musa awe Muislamu?
Yesu ndiye njia. Mjadala wa moja kwa moja kati ya walimu wa Kikristo na dini zingine.
Wanasema Mwenyezi Mungu ana mtoto. Jambo hilo wanasema limeleta jambo ambalo linachukiza.
Siri ya Mungu ambaye Mungu amejidhihirisha katika mili. Hii yote ni ukafiri.
Mumefanya makosa makubwa sana kusema kwamba Isa ibn Maryam ni Mungu wa pili na Allah ambaye ameumba mbingu na ardhi mkasema ni Mungu wa tatu.
Yesu ndiye njia. Jumamosi kuanzia saa 1:30 jioni kwenye runinga uipendayo ya Hope TV.
Welcome back. Climate change has greatly affected women, girls, as well as people living with disabilities. This is according to Harriet Chigai, who is an advisor on women's issues in the President's office, who said that there is a need for the group to be involved in any discussion about the climate. Chigai, who joined spouse to Vice President of the Nation of Ghana, Samira Buhumia, at the forum to discuss the contribution of women and girls to cope with the climate crisis, has said that women and girls and people living with disabilities are easily affected by the effects of climate change because most of them are isolated from political, economic, and social issues. The continent of Africa has more than 1 billion people and is most affected by climate change, but contributes little to the causes of change.
Women, girls, and those living with disability are more susceptible to the effects of climate change due to social, political, and economic inequalities that limit their autonomy and access to resources. We agree here that they also play important roles in helping to prepare for the most adverse impacts of climate change on households and communities. We are reasoning together, generating effective solutions, implementing them, making progress, and getting results. For all these strategies to work, gender disaggregated data is my point of emphasis.
On a similar note, the spouse of the Deputy President, Pastor Dorcas Rigathi, has said that the country stands at the forefront in making decisions on climate change. Speaking during the ongoing Africa Climate Summit at the KICC Nairobi, Pastor Dorcas said it is time for Africa to speak in one voice and make firm decisions. Pastor Dorcas has further said that the ongoing push for tree planting should be used as an opportunity to create jobs for the youth across Africa.
Africa is making decisions and acting against this existential threat, and Kenya has found itself at the forefront of the global discourse on climate change. This presents a remarkable opportunity for Africa to actively engage to this critical conversation. As I articulated yesterday, it is essential to acknowledge the indispensable role that women play in adaptation of climate-related measures across all nations. Consequently, we must harness the potential of the green growth as a means to generate employment opportunities for the youth and ensure prosperity of the future generations.
Moving on, Bumula, Member of Parliament Wamboka Wanami, has assured parents that the payment system at universities is still being reviewed to assess its quality. Speaking to the media, Wamboka said that parents have been complaining about the change in the system, stressing that public colleges will benefit greatly. Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu and the local education stakeholders are this weekend expected to determine what has been contributing to poor results.
Tumekuwa na kilio sana, wale wazazi wanapeleka watoto universities kwamba fees imekuwa juu sana. Lakini tulipoita Waziri Mochogu na hiyo KUPS na HELB wote, wakatuambia vile wamepanga katika between the loan, the bursary, mwanafunzi yule highest ambaye hajiwezi atakuwa analipa 7,000. Sasa na tukawaambia hata before pesa iprocessiwe wakubali watoto warudi shule. Na wale hawana IDs kwamba wanaweza apply bila hata IDs. Hiyo ikafanyika. Sasa bado tunachunguza, tunataka tuone effects baada ya wanafunzi kuingia, ndio tuone vile wazazi wanajihisi katika maneno hayo. Lakini tukiwa hapo mtakumbuka kwamba kamiti yangu tuliweza kupropose, hata tukafuata mpaka kwa floor ya bunge, tukanyang'anya private universities pesa.
Anti-female genital mutilation (FGM) stakeholders in Laikipia County have decried the underfunding, radicalization, and cultural practices among some communities. According to them, these are a major setback in the fight against the FGM vice. Speaking after an anti-FGM stakeholders sensitization workshop, Laikipia East DCC led by Patrick Muli, the stakeholders have said that government was committed to eradicate FGM by year 2022, but there was still a challenge that needed to be addressed by all the key players in the sector. Muli has, however, said that according to 2022 Kenya Demographic Survey, and Health Survey, there was a drop of FGM cases from 21% in 2014 to 15%.
Mengi yamefanywa, lakini bado hatujamaliza. Tunataka tuone kama tunaweza kuwa na zero tolerance upande wa ukeketaji. Niseme ya kwamba kama mshirika mkubwa kwa hii mashivu wetu mahali pote wako wamehimishwa kwamba kila jambo wanafanya lazima waongee kuhusu mambo ya ukeketaji ambao serikali imepinga kabisa, na sio serikali peke yake, kwa sababu kuna madhara mingi sana kwa wasichana wakiketwa wakiwa wadogo, kwa umri mdogo. Wengine wanakuwa ni kama wamefunguliwa mlango ya kuozwa. Kwa hivyo ni lazima tupinge kwa njia yote. Wananchi na wakaji wapo waweze kusema wakati wote wanapoona kuna wale ambao watu wamepanga mambo ya ukeketaji. Na niseme ya kwamba hii sio jambo la serikali, ni jambo ambao kila mmoja wetu angefaa kuhusika. Tuangamize mambo ya ukeketaji kabisa, maanake kuna madhara nyingi sana.
Right now, the prevalence of FGM in Kenya, as per the KDHS indicators, says that it is actually at 15%. That is for 2022 statistics, which is actually a drop from the 2014 statistics, which was at 21%. So we've been able to drop by 6%. And this one has been because of efforts by all of us, government, county government, national government, stakeholders, civil societies, champions, survivors who've been able to come out and speak openly against FGM, stating that they were cut and they will not wish any other person to go through the cut. So as anti-FGM, we appreciate the efforts of all of us. Despite the fact that we are 15%, we feel that 15% is still on a very high percentage. Our vision is to have zero tolerance to FGM in Kenya, because that is actually our mandate.
Hundreds of formerly internally displaced persons, IDPs, returned to their former tented camp in Nyandarua County to protest frustration of their bid to sell the land by a local administrator. The IDPs have said they bought the land in Nyandarua 16 years ago after each member contributed 10,000 shillings. The 2007-2008 post-election violence victims, through their officials, have said that they wanted to sell the land and share the proceeds because they were now living in lands where the government resettled them.
Mwaka wa 2014 members waliresolve kuuza hii mashamba, na walipo resolve kuuza hizi mashamba, ilifika mahali kuna one of our members alitumika na mtu fulani mwenye alikuwa ndani ya serikali, na wakaeka restriction. Baada ya kuweka restriction, the former county commissioner akaangalia, akaona hakuna haja, na akaamuru hiyo restriction itolewe.
Beba safuria. Mimi nasema wewe DC ya Karao, sisi hakuna deni na wewe. Unaigiria saba yetu namna gani? Unaigiria mali yetu namna gani? Wewe, sisi iko na tabu sana ya kuona wewe uking'ang'ana na hii shamba.
Tunataka atuambie anakujia wapi. Yeye alikuwa ADP. Tunataka kujua kama alikuwa ADP, akuje atuambie. Ni kwa sababu hii ni jasho yetu na ni haki yetu. Na kwanza ni huzuni kubwa sana tukinyang'anywa shamba na serikali. Ni kwa sababu kabisa tulifanya kazi mzito wakati tulikuja hapa tukiwa ADP. Tulikuwa tumesimama na serikali sasa inatukanyagia chini, ama si hivyo?
And residents of Bumula constituency in Bungoma County are up in arms protesting against Bumula Hospital after a 22-year-old woman died hours after giving birth. The residents have decried poor management as the source of the problems facing them and now want the head of the hospital to be evacuated quickly. Bumula Ward Representative Henry Nyongesa has urged residents to remain calm as they push for the transfer of the hospital's management. It has been noted that there has been an increase in maternal and child deaths in Bumula Ward this year with 6 cases.
Wale wamama ambao wanakufa kwa ajili ya ujauzito. Hii ndio hospitali imeregister the highest number in this county. Na ndio nilienda kwa ofisi nikaelezea waziri ambaye anasimamia mambo ya matibabu. Aje hapa waangalie shida ni nini ambayo wamama ama wasichana wetu wanakufia hapa baada tu ya kujifungua.
Unawezaje kumweka mtu kwa gari kumpeleka Bungoma amejifungua vizuri, umweke kwa trip, umweke kwa emergency yoyote, unamweka hapa akiwa kama amelala, lakini umsaidii kitu chochote, na huku mnakaa mkishangilia kwamba mnafanya usaidizi kwa watu wa Bumula.
Sisi Bumula tuko na shida kwa hapa health center yetu ya Bumula. Ukiingia ndani kukuwa na mgonjwa hakuna usaidizi. Tunashindwa tufanye nini jamani? Sasa wakati huu tunaomba serikali yetu ambayo iko saa hii itusaidie, itupee madaktari.
The following content is made for audiences 18 and under. Viewer discretion is advised for mature audiences.
the unexpected on the Stars Show here on Hope TV. It's getting bigger and better because it's all about talent. Anything goes from singing, dancing, magic, comedy,
handsome ladies and beautiful men.
This show is open to any performer below 18 years of age from any background with any talent. All you need is a skill and a star quality. Just remember to join us every Saturday from 8 a.m. with me, your host, Samara Musheru.
Welcome back. Now in business, Kenya is pitching for more conferences and meetings as it seeks to enhance its position as a leading tourism destination globally. The Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage believes that the MICE subsector will play a pivotal role in revitalizing tourism, particularly as it seeks to fully recover and surpass 2019 tourism numbers. Speaking at the sidelines of the ongoing Africa Climate Summit event held at Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC, the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage, Penina Malonza, says conferences have contributed heavily to visitor arrivals into the country.
The Kenya Pavilion is actually to bring out the aspects of Kenya for which we want the delegates to experience as they go around. Through the various agencies and their presentations, storytelling and discussion, they'll be able to get a glimpse of Kenya. So this is a gateway for which they'll be able to see Kenya, feel Kenya, and interact with Kenyans from different technical backgrounds and professional areas to be able to bring out the best of what Kenya has to offer, the things that they must know around the climate change, around the summit, and what Kenya is doing to achieve certain milestones, whether it's in tourism, energy, environment protection, and among others.
KICC is our convention for mice, and we are very happy to host this enormous event here, the Africa Climate Summit. Indeed, it is the most largest meeting that we are hosting this year, and of course after COVID, after COVID pandemic. And I must say that we are repositioning KICC for mice in a big way, because we began by doing renovations, and as you can see, it was from this renovation that actually the appetite to bring the summit here began. We are also planning to have a second mice venue in this country at Bomas, where we want to do a bigger, convention center, arena, and quite a number of other facilities within that space, so that we can position Kenya as an hub and a giant of mice in Africa.
Now in sports, FKF instructor Musa Otieno has highlighted the critical significance of training grassroots coaches. Speaking after 30 coaches embarked on a 10-day CAFD training course at Roysambu, Otieno, who is a former Harambee Stars captain, has emphasized the pivotal role of coaches in developing exceptional players. Under the tutelage of FKF instructors Musa Otieno and Jacqueline Akoth, these 30 students are slated to graduate next week.
I've taken this opportunity to enable me to upgrade my coaching skills, and also to empower the young ladies who are coming up and show them that being a lady in soccer does not mean that you are supposed to be, there are many things that you can do as ladies in sports. We are used to see these sports as male-dominated sports, whereby the men are the ones supposed to do everything. But I'm here to encourage all the ladies back at home and in the community that as ladies we can also do this. We can lead other men. That's why I'm here to coach, to undergo this course and go back to my community and help the ladies to come up.
We have been looking forward to this opportunity And we really appreciate it because when I'm going to go back, I'll be able even to mentor, I'll be able to advise, I'll be able to come up even with good programs and training sessions to enable these children to be able to achieve their talents in football.
For us to have good players, they have just said, we need to have good teachers, and with good teachers with knowledge, at least they'll transform it to the young players who are coming in. Because one of the challenges which we have been getting, in a sense that the guys who have been dealing up with the young kids around, they're not knowledgeable. And for us as instructors, we are trying to see how can we educate our coaches who are in Mashinani for us to do something which can help the future generation in Kenyan football.
And KCB tactician Bernard Mwalala has identified the area to work on in his team before the resumption of the Football Kenya Federation Premier League after the international break. The Bankers kicked off their campaign with a hard-fought 1-0 win over AFC Leopards in the second round, courtesy of Derek Otanga's strike. Speaking after the match, the former Ulinzi Stars coach highlighted the final third as the main area needing refining. With the FIFA window taking center stage, there will be no league action this coming weekend, with all FKFPL matches returning on Saturday 16th of this month.
Imekuwa mchezo mzuri. Ukiangalia FC wamejituma, KCB pia nayo upande wangu tumejituma, but mwishowe tumepata nafasi ambayo ilikuwa ni half chance na tukapata hizi point 3. Haikuwa mchezo mzuri, rahisi, lakini siku zote point 3 ni muhimu sana katika mchezo wa ligi. Nadhani mimi peke yangu ndio atakuwa na nafasi ya kucheza mzunguko wa kwanza. So leo nimeona mambo mazuri na pia nimeona mambo ambayo lazima turekebishe. So hiyo ndio kitu ambayo tunaweza sema kwamba ni work in progress. So tunarudi tena kwa drawing board ili tu improve. Na ni vizuri tuta improve hizi vitu wakati tayari tumepata ushindi. So nadhani issue si kushinda AFC Leopards, but kushinda mchezo wa kwanza.
Well, it's a wrap on Newswatch tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Tess Njenga and our sign language interpreter is Boniface Mureithi. Have a good night.